Welcome, Gentle. Yeah, I guess when the clock timer chimes, you get to kick it off, or do we need to watch the clock or listen to your voice?
Yeah, I will, in 2 minutes, at exactly 2 o'clock. No, 1 o'clock.
Excellent.
Sorry. I'll introduce you, and then I'll hand it over to you.
Bueno, thank you. I'm beginning to suspect you've done this before.
Just a little bit.
Oh, I'm counting on that. Okay, I'll be quiet for 30, 90 seconds. See if I can manage that without exploding.
Okay, it is 1 o'clock, and we will get started here. Um, where am I? Welcome everyone to the Virtual Worlds Education Consortium Metaverse Experts Series. And for those of you who are new, I have put the website into the chat, and you can find the VWEC on many social media channels. Um, for our presentation, after our presentation, we will move to the deck for social time for those who want to stay and ask additional questions. Um, after, we do ask that you put your questions into chat, and I will be monitoring the chat, and I will ask your questions once Agile is finished presenting. You can also ask your question once he's finished as well. We are also live streaming the presentation, and you can find that in the link in the chat as well. So I am very happy to introduce. I'm very happy to introduce our metaverse expert speaker to you today, AgileBill. AgileBill has worked as a developer, a performance engineer, a project manager, and a teacher since the 1980s. He's used and studied how to teach in virtual environments at Rockcliffe University, University of Washington, University of West England, and has obtained a master's degree in educational technology from Boise State University. And Agile, you can take it away.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Um, Appreciate the introduction. I'm really glad to be here, everybody. So thank you for coming. Um, let's see here. This slide is thank you to the community here, Education Consortium, VWEC. And the title of my talk today is Patterns and Puzzles. Those are two things we'll be talking about. Great to see everybody. Um, I have all these ridiculous certifications, so I've made a crossword puzzle out of them. But there's what what Marie just said. That's a little bit about me. So there's two parts to this talk today. Let's see here. One is about what we build to teach. How are we going to make it cooler than just what people are getting used to? They're getting used to Zoom. Zoom's awesome, but it's kind of a little bit flat thing, right? Microsoft Teams, WebEx, you name it. So post-pandemic, people have developed patterns of working. And is there room still for what we can do best? I think that's an interesting challenge. So I'm going to give you some links to, movies, scenes of videos of my little builds here. I'll do that at the end. So you can watch them later if you want. So that's what we're going to do for the live demo. But let me start off with the campfire. So have you ever been to a discussion around a campfire? And I'm chuckling because we've got one here today in our venue. So what makes that special? What makes that a thing? So think about that. Now I'm gonna give you question marks before a part where I want you to chime in voice or text. So that might be a rhetorical question, but you can think silently about that. Why do so many cool venues have a little campfire in the middle? What's that about? Another way to do a class or a talk would be to simulate what we see in a traditional classroom. Right, so I've got the slide projector. I had to go out and buy that on Marketplace, right? I'm chuckling about that. And the little screen that goes with it. And then I'm trying to show my animation in the chair that I'm a little bit bored, like my poor student robot there is falling asleep. And so although it's tempting to recreate what we're used to in a physical metaverse or a non-verse, I don't know what you call it. What do we call real life these days? We could recreate that as a metaphor. I think we need to be choosy about, is that the most effective way? Sometimes it is, because people know how to behave in that kind of room, right? But my poor robot is slumped over. So what do you guys think? Now you get to ask questions, post them in chat, or offer your opinion. What do you guys think? Is that traditional metaphor? Is that good or bad? Thoughts, gestures, opinions? Depends. Awesome, Gentle. That's a great answer. It really does. Can be both. Yes, Meryl. I like that question or that answer. Dex, yep, it's different. Excellent. You guys should be coaches. You have good answers. Maybe for newbies? Yeah, right. Absolutely. It's comfortable for them. When I was brand new, I landed in Rockcliffe and at the VWBPE conference, but went back to Rockcliffe, and there's a lot of classroom spaces with chairs, and I felt kind of comfortable. I was disoriented in coming into virtual for the first time, but it was comforting when I saw a classroom. I know I could sit there and listen, so it's maybe not all bad. Val says tradition can provide familiarity, but taking advantage of what we cannot do in the physical world is an advantage here. I agree with that. I like the impossible in real life stuff, right? Sarah says traditional classroom tends to elicit traditional classroom behavior. We don't always want them to get stuck in that rut. Yeah, absolutely, right? Excellent point. I love that. Good answers, everybody. So my thought for you today, this is my main point of the talk, is message versus mood. I think when we talk, we're teaching the subconscious. When you're listening, your conscious is trying to figure out what I'm saying and see if it's useful. But I think there's some subconscious stuff. So this is a fun venue because we've got some candy, holiday decorations. That's awesome. And you guys can think about what is the significance of the campfire in the middle. Does that bind us together or provide a focus, or is it irrelevant? Is it noise? Does it relax me because it's fun? I subconsciously remember telling campfire stories around a fire. Is it genetic? Because maybe my caveman genes have been programmed that campfires are a safe venue for my tribe. I don't know. Does it make it fun versus serious in a good way or bad way? I don't know. So my message here is I think when we build our classrooms, we build our educational scenes, remember that we're talking to both the conscious and the subconscious. I have zero data to prove that. I would love to do some research, but I thought, well, I'll just skip that research part and just talk to you today. So you guys mentioned what's impossible in real life. Like, what can we build that would maybe more get people thinking out of the box versus a traditional metaphor of a classroom? Well, you might have an underwater think tank. In this platform, water is at 20 meters, and they give you different lighting effects if you go underneath the water. If you port your educational scene to a different platform, it may act different. So I've ported some of my builds to Unity or with the Unity toolkit, blah, blah, and the water's just a plane. Once you're under the water, it doesn't look different, right? So SL, this environment, OpenSim based things are kind of fun because they give you this kind of murky, watery underwater thing. And looking at water, you can get fancy with different lighting settings. But the idea here is maybe this is a metaphor that you're in a think tank, you're submerged. Maybe it does something to you subconsciously about, does it let you think deeper, or is that just a cute kind of metaphor? So that's one example of talking to the subconscious. The other one is this design was very clever by Pamela. This was the bleachers. So you see those straight lines of seating there. That's specifically for people that just want to observe. The social contact for that space is you don't have to talk if you're sitting back there in the bleacher rows. Conversely, if you're in the round table seating, you're going to be offered a chance to speak. So you're going to get a chance to speak, which you can pass, et cetera, et cetera. So you guys have probably done things like that, or newer or better, different, saying you might have been to some of those meetings. But that's an interesting build because it combines elements of fun and things to get your mind out of your same day old, real life metaphors. But there's a structural algorithm to the elements of round table versus observers. So that's kind of the opposite. I wanted to show you that slide because it's kind of the opposite of my poor robot falling asleep in this traditional metaphor. Sometimes tradition's fine. Maybe I want to bring people to my university and it's cool. So maybe I want the link to the physical campus. I don't know. So here's another one, right? So this lady, Lisa Atkins, she's the one with the red hair there on the left. She was famous in real life coaching, teaching circles because they would put tape on the floor and they would do an exercise which is called a constellation. And the constellation was you can stand farther away from the center if you're kind of not connected with the topic, or if you know a lot or you do that thing a lot, you can walk closer to the center. And they have this, for me as a coach, body knowledge, they have these different styles of coaching. They call them different stances. So what I did for this build is I mapped out that concept on the floor. And so on the floor, you can literally walk. And what I wanted in this build is to force yourself, like I have one body, one avatar, so I have to move away from one stance to move into the other stance. And that's germane to the lesson, because we're trying to teach people is, be careful when you're moving from teaching to coaching to facilitating towards just, telling people your opinion versus facilitating and being neutral. So by having the avatar walk and make that psychophysical choice, I wanted to reinforce that lesson to the subconscious. Like, you guys are the first ones to probably hear my full crazy Bill explanation of why I built it that way. But I'm trying to talk to the conscious with the labels and the words, but I'm trying to talk to the subconscious with your innate subconscious perceptions of motion of others and motions of yourself, and a forced choice based on the diagram. So that's a walkable thing, a walkable design. Another way to do it is the factory. It's kind of it's not just a metaphor. So if you had a metaphor for a factory, that's cool. Like, I like to think of my project management work that I teach and I do. It's a factory, but a factory is significant in my field because they spend a lot of time thinking about how do we arrange the rooms and the floor and the devices in the room to be efficient, to minimize the pathway, to minimize the walking distance or wasted time of motion when I'm walking between rooms in the factory. So I tried to construct the lesson of what do I teach in my style of agile project management. How would that look if I showed my process in the factory floor? And the little window there is so I can talk to my customer, my stakeholder. And then I have an artifact on the floor. I'll show you in a second. That's my agile hopscotch. Val has used that in our UW classes. But then each step in the process is simulated by walking through a different room. So that's is that hopefully fun, but hopefully more significantly, they might learn better in that if I engage both their conscious and also their subconscious. That thing on the floor, here's a picture, it's agile hopscotch. And what you do there, and some of you, I know Val has gone through that, you can step on the squares and turn, and that's your turn to speak. So in our agile project management methodology, we'll have a stand-up meeting. I'll say, hey, what'd you do yesterday? I'll talk about, well, yesterday I made my slides, this talk I'm giving. And then what am I doing today? Well, a couple hot, headline items. And then I actually move my avatar to stand on those squares. And I say, well, today I'm going to deliver the talk. I'm going to answer questions they have. And I might look at the calendar for their next talk so I can visit, And then you move the avatar to the next square and talk about the blockers. Well, I didn't have permission. I couldn't figure out how to get into put my slides in the slideshow thing. I had to get help with that. You guys were very nice. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, staff, for setting that up. And then I had to relearn the Speakeasy HUD. I've used that before. But I actually had to write out my script and think about what's the connection between my words on the stream or in voice versus what I put in the script, So that was a blocker. So that's an example of my agile method. Yay, shout out to Dex. Yeah, Scrum, right? Awesome. The buzzards, I love it. And then that's how I might try to teach that concept in 3D, which is fun and cool. Knowing myself as I do, for me, I lean into the fun. I risk losing sane people that will be disoriented if I throw too much metaphor and too much subconscious and too much fun. So that's where I need you guys to build your education to kind of balance that. Then the epiphany I had, or the next build here is a game board. You'll notice the size of my robotic avatar there off to the side. So it kind of looks like the factory. In fact, it's a shrunk down version of my Agile factory. But I put in a little piece, like a cheap, you could have a mesh avatar in there now, but it's a symbolic piece to represent a person with a role. And the different hats represent different roles those people play in my process, which is the subject of my lesson. So I shrank it down. And why? And I thought it was fun because I think there's psychological safety when something is smaller than you. This is a totally unproven, unresearched hypothesis. But my hypothesis is if something is your size, or maybe 80% 20% your size, I'm going to view that subconsciously, instinctively as a possible threat. And my subconscious, I mean, you might be talking to me about Agile or, Halloween or something fun, but my subconscious is thinking, okay, this is about my size. Do I date it? Do I eat it? Do I run away from it? Do I fight it? Like my subconscious is fear, fright, flight assessment. And I'm missing what you're saying at first because I'm talking to a big thing that may be a little scary, or I have to quickly triage, is this thing a threat? So in the game pattern, it's small. And not only is it small, but I have superior agency, meaning I'm big and I'm kind of like in a godlike powers over this thing. So the game board, I have power over the pieces. I can move where I choose in the different rooms. I might lose the game, but my subconscious is happy because it feels pretty safe. So that's actually a different kind of design pattern you could use for training, is a game board, or more to the point, something small that the person in your virtual reality environment is interacting with or manipulating. That's different than if you went into Diablo or something, or Warcraft, and you're the size in the environment, you're scaled to the environment, and now I could get sniped or shot by an orc or whatever, and I know it's a game, but my subconscious is maybe immersed into that. Don't want to lose my character, hit points, and treasure, but it's quite a different thing. Like if you're walking through a factory that I'm building to analyze the pathways or to get the metaphor, that's a different build than the game board. So that's just me overly nerding out on that, but I thought that was an interesting epiphany when I decided the game board was a thing. So yeah, and I wanted to shout out Rhiannon there. Roles, like if you have your avatar like Avacon, right? If you dress up different or you have color-based role. And if you notice on U.S. aircraft carriers, sometimes they color code the crew on the flight deck. Or there was a story about doctors in a hospital, and when they're about to pour medication or do something critical, or nurses, they put on a vest, an orange vest, which means don't interrupt me now, I'm heads down. But I think it's fun, without overly constricting people in a given role, it's fun to wear an outfit that corresponds to the role, because that's another technique you can use, right? There you go. So this case, I dabbled at the University of West of England. Some of those other projects are from Boise Land, which was fun. This one's the English version. So we had an assignment, and you had to create an educational build in a cube shape. It had to be, I think, 20 meters tall and 20 meters wide, XYZ 20, 20, 20. And that was hard because I'm kind of not used to using the vertical. Right. And, Goodman did a brilliant build as an example where he had people drop. It was for, sadly, a Holocaust build. In the top, you're riding on a train, and then you drop. Like he changed the physics of the floor, and you drop into this horrible camp. And so I thought that was a neat use of the vertical. My example I'm showing you from the class there was a diner, because I think if you've ever watched a restaurant rescue, a bar rescue, I see a lot of project management going on in restaurants. And this is me, I love metaphors. I mean, sometimes it's too much for normal people, but I thought, well, project management's like a metaphor. You've got the clients, the customers you're serving up there in the eating part. It's really nicely decorated, and they're waiting. You don't want them to wait too long. You want to treat them well. You want to listen to what they want. That's a lot like what we do in project management, where we're trying to understand the customer requirements. We're going to go build some software. I do software project management stuff. So what do you want? What are your requirements, right? But behind the scenes, right, there's this dirty kitchen, hopefully not too dirty, but it's very businesslike, and they're racing around between the fridge, the ice box, and the oven, and the different assembly and plating of dishes, and it's very much like a factory. So that's on the right, the oven there. So I thought that was a fun way to build a diner and then talk about my lesson, teaching people how would you do IT, Agile Project Management, or Scrum, and this is a metaphor with the restaurant. You can even argue it's the real deal. Like you could probably run project management techniques to run your restaurant. Anyway, so that was an example. It leans heavily on the metaphor, though. Like if people grew up in a place where they didn't have restaurants that looked like mine, they may be confused by all this similarity, metaphor, concept. Their world may be different. So I could fail sometimes if I do too much metaphor or the wrong metaphor. But it's a thing, so I made my list. So I thought I'd share it with you. So I made a list of, there's a whole bunch of different builds we've seen over the years. You guys probably have some interesting ones, different ones. I list some of the ones I showed you. What do you guys think? Now it's question time. Well, what do you guys think about builds, patterns, types of scenes? Metaphors too much? Not enough? What do you think? You respond in chat or I think voice. That's my host say. That won't go on the stream. Up to you guys. Awesome. Excellent. Gentle says metaphors are in part culturally influenced, so be cautious. Yes, +1 to Gentle on that. I grew up as a white male in Southern California in the 60s, so I know all about Star Trek. So if you guys throw out Star Trek lingo, metaphors, I'll click with me. I'll be excited. 80% of the people I coach and work with today are fantastic and really nice people, really smart, but they're from India. Some are from India and they live in the US. Some are still in India and they may not have grown up in the same culture I did because they tend to be a little younger and they have cool things. It's just we don't know each other's cool stuff necessarily. A balance. Val says, yeah, don't overwhelm your audience. Yes. Awesome. Yeah, right. With any luck, they'll keep pumping out Star Trek series for me to watch, which I enjoy, and they'll keep the common culture stories going through there. I love that. Everything I need in life, I learned from watching Star Trek. That used to be kind of a joke or an idiom. This might trigger a gesture here. There we go. I did it without my gesture. Sarah says, metaphors do not get people to think out of their boxes, but only work for people who understand what metaphors are and how to spot situations in which they can be useful. Awesome observation. Spot on. I thought everyone was like me. And then when I was about 30, I took this class in psychology or whatever. I realized some people are wired differently. So if you do Myers-Briggs, like I'm a total ENFP, which just means I love my metaphors. And if people give me metaphors, I'm right there, right? But there's some other people that really are more concrete. It's not good or bad. It's just different, right? And so I want to, as a teacher, I want to be able to read. There goes. Sorry, there's my gesture. Couldn't resist. I want to reach people when I teach that have different, they're wired differently or they grew up differently. Well, you know, leave no student behind kind of deal. He says her SO and she are not from the same culture. And it can get hilarious when they're not on the same wavelength. Like, why would we care about that when the alarm goes off, not on? Oh, see, that's interesting. How funny. What a great example. Alarm off. Is that good or bad, right? Little computer science, big endian, little endian. Like, would you count which side of the binary numbers do you start counting from? Yeah, the alarm. Or I heard a story when I was working in the 90s about people from Germany, a red switch meant danger. And so you're not supposed to have a red switch on your PC for power on. And so they changed on the PS2. This is showing how old I am. The PS2s, IBM changed those to be white power on switches. so they could sell this stuff in Germany without freaking people out. Excellent. Great comments, everybody. I love it. Love the discussion. So let me show you another example. Like if you guys are teaching, let's say you're teaching people about the solar system. And I'm going to show you this picture or this model. What do you see anything you would change? What do you all think? Scale? Excellent. Yes. Shout out to Warwick. Yes, scale. Sizes? Yes, Dex. Marine planet sizes are incorrect. Indeed, right? So I purposely made them all the same because I wanted to create a cognitive dissonance. You guys, my ed heads might recognize that buzzword. Planet sizes, yes, incorrect. So it's cognitive dissonance means I grab your attention when you see something wrong. And I do that all the time when I teach my Agile stuff and for money during the day. It's really boring and everyone's falling asleep or they're doing email. And so what I do is I throw something that's different or like outrageously wrong. And they get excited. Then they go in there and the type A and then wake up and they look for what's wrong and they call it out. And so I do that to breathe life into my classroom so they'll stay awake. Um, so that's a thing on purpose. And I think that's fun because in our virtual world, it's easy to do. Like you just resize that prim and boom, you got it. Whereas if I was teaching this in Zoom, I don't know, like if I bought a model of the solar system, like I couldn't quite do that. So that was fun to do that as a create instance of cognitive dissonance. And I could do that, use that technique in my classroom easily. Thank you, 3D Land, PR. You also mentioned black and white. So that might be the moon behind the Earth there. So you see Mars and Venus and Earth and the moon, they're all the same size, which is of course silly. So the first thing you point out, and I hope learn then, is like, well, these are all different sizes, and then you could get interested in what size is the moon compared to Mars and blah, 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 right? So I set up that effect by the way I designed this. Right now it's a slide, but you can imagine if I res these in front of you in 3D, the other one I was thinking of is distance. Like these are all at the same distance, but in actual factual, they're not the same distance, right? So there's lots of things. And like you said, the black and white, I could have made them black and white, and then maybe you have to add the color for Mars or something. So I had a lot of fun with that. Now, but is this like my game, my small model that people manipulate and they feel psychologically safe? Because I perceive myself as big and these planet symbols are small. I'm just not even thinking about that, thinking about the size of the planets there. So that's an instance. I call that inner models. Oh, good one. Yes. I love that one especially. Look at that. Great one. Regarding, I'm kind of lying to you about the nature of the solar system because they are not lined up like that very often. The more normal case would be they're scattered around an ellipse, right? Or is it a circle? I don't know. That sounds like another topic to discuss. We go in a circle. Math geeks out there, or is it an ellipse, or what is that? So this model is a case of something smaller. It's a model that I'm outside of, I'm bigger than, and I'm teaching you by having you play with this model. The other thing I can do in 3D land, which is fun, is I could just give you the textures. I could give you the textures for each planet. I could give you or teach you how to make a spherical prim. Say you go make me a model of the universe, of the solar system. You make your assignment, my student is you make a model of the solar system and show me all the key facts or the facts that are important to you, or maybe trick your peer students, put one little mistake in there, but one mistake and see if somebody else spots it. Oh, good one. Yeah, that's awesome. Good one, Ari Pluto. I love that question. See, so that's kind of Socratic teaching style through this model. And I rather than just telling you there's X number of planets, I say, well, here's some textures and go res the sphere, and you draw me a picture of the solar system. That's my constructivist, Jean Piaget constructivism approach to teaching you something. And I find that to be easy peasy here in OpenSim style virtual worlds, virtual reality. And I think it's more meaningful if it's not just a slide, but if you were to res this in 3D and you can walk around it and maybe click on it. When I do this in 3D, I actually let you click on it and I give you a rotate script. You can see the planets rotating. You can geek out on how fast and all that. So this is something that I would love to see in the future or past of education, is that we can be in these 3D immersive models to teach better. Truth be told, with all the friction from tooling, it's like I teach in 3D as much as I do in Zoom and Microsoft Teams, which are also great tools, etc. But that is, you apply those techniques, cognitive dissonance, small model, animation, proximity, etc., to whatever you're teaching, in case you're not teaching astronomy. But I love that stuff. I think of what would go into that. You see, I love that. That's awesome, Ray. Cool, Ari NASA. So have they, like I remember a quote from Jean Piaget on constructivism, have I robbed you of the opportunity to learn it forever if I tell you the answer? Right? Do I have to ask the question or do I have to tell you the answer when I'm teaching? My students at work, they're so busy, sometimes I need to just tell them the answer, like do this, do it this way, right? But I really am excited to occasionally shake it up by throwing out something, let them build it, right? Yeah, there you go, Marie. Yeah, if you teach it, you learn it, right? So here's my epiphany. Click my HUD there for you. So yeah, you can give them cognitive dissonance. We talked about that. It's the inside. My epiphany when I was doing all these cool scenes, I was thinking, you know what? VR is the greatest thing since sliced bread for teaching. It's so good. This is so cool. They're going to see my planets and really they're going to see my Agile factory and really love it and learn a lot. But I begin to suspect, and this is maybe true if you've visited other people's builds, even if they're great, I wonder if I'm learning more from building it than I would if I just was a student. I was walking through it. So that fits in with my constructivist thought there. That's just a word for saying you give them a set of tools and paintbrushes or whatever and let them build and teach the lesson. Part of it's like a teach back. Part of it's like building it physically, but also if you were to write slides or just write a blog post, you still qualify as constructivist pattern there. So I love the constructionist or the ability to do that easily or richer and with more richer media and virtual reality. I think that's just the coolest thing ever. But that was my epiphany. I might be kind of the one learning this, and I maybe not doing as good a job for the students. Yeah, different levels. I love that, Didi, right? That's you learn it at a deeper level by building it out. You learn a lot by teaching. Thoughts, questions, gestures so far? Different levels. Dex says, when you build a scene, you need to learn what you want to relay first. Include that many sources, even if the final result, you use only a few of them. That's interesting. Ray makes your students build educational experiences in 3D. I would love that, man. I want to take your class. That's epic. So the Nexus thing, yeah, that's awesome. I would say the process of researching, vetting the pile of stuff and selecting it, I think that's really brilliant. I want to take your classes too. That sounds effective. That sounds brilliant. Evil Marie's classes are too hard. They sound good, but they sound difficult. It's gonna make me work. Like I have to pay attention. Oh my gosh. Can't do email during your class. That's good. Uh, so one of the challenges to these things that we're building and sharing is psychology. And I call it subliminal psychology or subconscious. But I think sometimes I have good builds or builds I don't feel comfortable with. And what I'm interested in is when you guys build stuff or when I build stuff, what makes for a really good build? Like this one's pretty good. I know how to behave. I know to sit at the front of the room. I'm on a raised area, so you guys know I'm the speaker. I'm supposed to talk. We're kind of united by that nice little campfire, so I'm in a safe space because I'm warm and toasty. The oil in my gears is melting a little bit, but that's okay. So that's the design of an educational space. And so I would say that it's going to be nostalgic for me. If you took away this build, I would actually kind of miss it. Subconsciously, I would freak out and be kind of nostalgic for it. Like that's true if you've been to part of a sim that's been around for 10 years and it closes, it's like, oh my gosh. That's like if a squirrel is burying their food somewhere and they build apartments on it and they're kind of freaking out because they don't know where their stuff is. I miss an area if they tear down a building or repurpose it. So I think that's a piece, and I don't know what you call it in psychology, but for me it's a piece. I'll call that anchoring. Like I'm anchored into the space now, and I'll enjoy it when I come back. Rooting is different, where I'm rooted by maybe some sound of the water behind me, or the campfire. I kind of know where that is, right? It orients me into the space, and I know where Val's info center is. She showed me that. I know it's just off to the right. And then if you have a fountain somewhere, or those are spatial cues to navigate a space. And I think even if it's just there for fun, my subconscious is going to orient my brain to your space and kind of depend on it being there. I know it's there. And if you move it, I'll have to go through this loop in my brain to reorient myself to the space, which means I'm not listening to your lecture for those 5 seconds that takes. Maybe. I haven't proven any of this. You guys probably know this stuff, but we're also wired to scan. And I got this from Pathfinder last year. This is so cool. He was talking to neuroscientists, and he thinks we're psychologically wired to be good at scanning the horizon for threats. We can quickly look and see what's on the horizon. So if it's a vertical, it slows me down a little bit to assess information or the environment vertical. So this is just another example of designing for your subconscious, not just the conscious lesson, like the planets are different sizes, right? But subconsciously, are you distracted or is the lesson reinforced by the build? And moving around, right? Proximity, things close together. So those are fun. There's probably a lot more. You guys probably know this, but I think it'd be fun to think about these things when we build. The movement. So my cat, I notice, I guess I don't know if cats are colorblind or etc. But when I move the string, they jump on it. Yeah, cultural could be, right? Different colors mean, like white means death in some cultures, right? But for my cat, if I move a string, he's going to jump on it. If it's stationary, they don't really perceive it. Like I could show a stationary picture of another cat, and they don't react to it. So I think that's interesting. Doing something in motion. So, for example, if I were to stand up, walk around, how do you guys feel when I just did this? I mean, it's okay. Like I'm still giving the talk. I'm not doing anything bad. But I hypothesize that for a second, your subconscious freaked out. It's like, what is he doing? Is he going to go off the podium? Is he off the stage? Is he going to give Marie a hard time? Like, what's going on there? So I think that may have distracted you for a few seconds. And that's motion, isn't it? And proximity, body language, high level, that stuff. I won't do that again. Sorry if I scared you. You guys don't care. This is Bill just being Bill. But anyway. Oh, good, good. Thank you. Yeah, sorry about that. I did that for purely educational purposes. Glad you recovered. But you can use that consciously in your builds. It's like if people go through orientation area or whatever, right? So that's good. There's another one about agency. Like I dress as a robot to show you that I'm all about logic and thinking and all this stuff. And I like Val's outfit. She's got the library that's iconic for her field of study and expertise. Right? She's got the books and the mindware that's brilliant. So peripatetic. Yeah, I think for mine it's more pathetic. I don't that's a good word. I have to Google that. So how I look and is I feel differently when I dress differently. That's a Proteus effect, right? We studied that at UW. Val and I went there, University of Washington, for a bit. If I dress as a Canadian border guard, do I feel differently in the role while I'm learning? If I dress as a robot, I'm all about science and technology. Or is it just a branding thing, right? You guys all look great, by the way. Excellent. So that's something to consider. Is that part of your build, or is that just part of how you roll when you teach? The other thing is community, and I guess different metaverse tools have lots of community and ability, but not all of them. So I took my little Unity builds, my factory and stuff, and I'm just in Unity, and I had Jibe, which is an old way to connect avatars in Unity. But now if I'm building other worlds, I don't know how to connect the avatars as much. Do I need that for a planet build? So here's my big puzzle thing. So there's another part. The technology keeps changing. Oh my gosh, right? So I have the dev kit 1, like the Kickstarter for Oculus Rift. And then I get seasick, and then I have the newer one of Quest. And to be honest, I don't use them as much as you guys probably do. And then I keep thinking about builds, and I have Science Space and Kitely and all these cool different worlds and venues. Turf was fun. Verbella was fun. But when you get in these hardware things, Google Cardboard, it's like they're coming and going at a pretty high rate. Like the technology curve here is steep, and that they keep changing over and over and over rapidly. And so by the time I invest in creating my wonderful planet build or factory build, that venue becomes not interesting or inaccessible or obsolete. I don't know what. So I'm hoping, Apple, I like all my Apple gear, I like all my toys, but Apple seems to be good at maybe making things, succeeding with things where things didn't take off. You may remember, so I have like Handspring Palm Pilot. It's great. I knew that was going to take off, so I even bought stock in Handspring because the Palm Pilot was going to be the thing, right? Then it turned out you've probably not heard of it because it fell apart, right? It didn't go. But eventually, it was an early one where you could draw on the screen and recognize your writing. And now it's a pretty common thing to be able to do that, or you don't need to communicate another way. So it became obsolete. So there's danger in all these devices, all these platforms became obsolete rapidly. But I'm hoping I figured if Apple took that and they actually came up with the iPhone took off nicely, and the iPad took off nicely. And it seems like some of the things they do turn out better than some other ventures. So we'll see. So I thought I'll dabble in this and see what I can do in it. My concern with this one, where's my community? So I put that on my other slide, and you can maybe go into universe and have people without legs grief you. I don't know. And I don't know on this Vision OS one, but I'm trying to decide if it's just normal Apple magic that will make this thing really interesting, or if it will go the same way as the other ventures into this VR field. So I'm interested in the eyes. You can see the person's eyes even when they're wearing the device. And who cares? Like if they're using it, they don't care. They don't see it. But if I'm in a social environment in a mixed reality world, I kind of freak out when there's somebody that's wearing something that occludes their eyes. And for me, the reason is I don't know what their emotion is. And so my subconscious is distracted. My subconscious is, are they a threat? Are they happy? Are they sad? And with this, ingeniously, I think that solves that problem. This is maybe just one of many problems that they may be able to solve using their hardware and their Appleness. And so I thought they're worth dabbling in. And my worry is now I got to port my darn factory again. Got to brush off Unity build or learn, Reality Kit or it's work. I have to keep doing this. Whereas my beloved SL, it's done. It's still here and it's easy to do. I can just twist prims or buy something. And these other things, I got to install these toolkits and, learn my mesh skills and Unity and blah, 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 workflow. So my message to you is, in addition to the raw construction of your educational scene, one of the threats we have to our us as teachers is we have to keep porting it to different technologies. And I was all set to go in Cloud Party. That was going to be the best one, right? But then it's so good that somebody bought it, right? Or maybe some aren't good enough and they fail, or oh my gosh, I saw some that I loved and they went poof for good or bad reasons and blah, blah. So I think be ready as a teacher, preserve the essence of your factory or your campfire, or whatever your build is, and think about keeping it in your legacy environment that you love, but being able to port that concept to, new platforms as you go. And also in virtual reality, am I the small inner model of the planets? Am I the small game board? Or now am I mixed in with these 6-foot tall avatars, 5-foot tall avatars that I look eye to eye? Is that a threat? Or do I have to, is that a good structure for my classroom? Maybe that's good. So I want to maybe go do music and I want to see people that look like me, dress like me. This is great. But it's a conscious choice in your design you might want to think about. Next has Oculus Quest 2 and doesn't use it much, mostly because of time, yes. But VR puzzle games like Cubism, they say is great. We have to put blocks and arrangement. It makes the shape of higher levels. You got different shapes of blocks. See, that's awesome. That is brilliant. So I think it has potential. I think it has potential to unlock new educational structures that we have. So I'm in for VR. You guys probably know more about Quest than I do. But I thought it's still worth a look, but you can't pry this platform out from my robotic fingers. The other change to it is just for me, teaching like the stuff I taught you guys 20 years ago about Agile is like, it's 20 years old. It's like they're starting to get it. Like they don't need it as much. I have to think of new topics to teach, or just, I'm overhead. Teaching is overhead in the corporate world. So like sometimes you move jobs or you sweat a little bit. What's the appetite for education in my environment? Hopefully you guys are in good shape with universities or whatnot, or where you teach. But in mine, I got to keep it actual, practical, factual enough, or I'm subject to the ebb and flow of the corporate training budget. So sometimes things can be threats to our training strategy that don't have to do just with our educational design, but it may be technology, platform lag, quality. Some of these things are buggy, some of them are slow. Anyway, somebody said even HP got out of making VR headsets. There's so much churn. And I was almost like wait and see or discouraged, like, where's this going? But I think Apple, I have a lot of faith that they can do something. It's certainly interesting. The first one's really they're milking the developers, right? It's not cheap, but it's justified for if you're trying to design, be the first one out of the gate. I imagine like the iPhone, think about how much you spend on the iPhone SE. Like now they're cheaper. And you can still buy a high-end one, but it's not $3,000. Your phone is what, 1,000. You can get one for 250 if you want to. So we used to be thinking about what grid am I on, on different tools. Unity is cool, Verbella was cool. All those things are good. There's a bunch that come and go. I'm pasting in with my Speakeasy HUD. I think for me, 2016 was an inflection point where get goggles or go home. And I didn't want goggles because I didn't want to have to spend the money for every student, or I wear glasses and they're kind of hard for me, or I get motion sick easily, or I'm old, so my neck hurts all the time. So but I'm thinking we'll see what Apple does with it. In a perfect world, I'll be able to port my classroom from OpenSim, Unity, Vision OS, what have you, de jure, right? I want the patterns, the learning structures to port. Even, yeah, that's a good question, Dex. Virtual reality, augmented reality, XR, VR. People don't distinguish from those terms as much, but like my office that I'm speaking to you from now is a mess. It's a mess. Thank goodness you can't see it because I've got stacks of books everywhere. I've got musical instruments. I've got games. I've got D&D books. I've got magic card. I've got everything, and some of just trash. Um, it's a very chaotic mess, and that could be cool. But if I were experiencing with you, I don't know that I want my office in that scene. I guess sometimes I would because it's cool, but my room does not look like the Apple commercials of people's nice living rooms. Like my living room doesn't look like that. So it's still nice because there are uses for VR. Like I used to play the game, was it Ingress, where I'd walk to different fountains and I'd click a button on my phone. I'd get points for unlocking a secret alien fountain, and that was fun. That's augmented reality. Yay. But for me, I'm a virtual reality kind of guy. Like take away my messy room. I want to immerse with you guys as equals in 3D. I respect, people's appetite for both or either, but that's another conscious design point, right? So I'm excited about where technology can go, see what happens with it. There was one I liked called Sakoko, which was just a two-dimensional thing, right? So I did my factory lesson in 2D. It's still the different rooms of the factory. Or by contrast, the sepia toned picture of the happy faces there. Maybe we're used to teaching on Zoom and friends like that, webcam, they're all good. Is that what I need? Or maybe I don't need that? That was some years ago. I'm 15 years ago, and I'm a lot older, and so I look a little older. That's okay. I don't have to be on camera. I'm still the same otherwise. So we've got all these varieties of factors coming at you from business and technology. Can you script your world on the fly? Can I go into Unity or Apple Vision or wherever? Can I create a script and we collaborate on a multi-piece build at the same time? So that is my talk for you guys today. My call to action is think about your designs, think about psychology, think about porting it, stay here because this is the coolest environment in my opinion. Play Pokemon Go, absolutely. If you want to read more, check out these books. And what I wanted to do also is I gave you a couple links. Oops. To if you get really bored later, this is after the meet and greet maybe, but you could see some videos of different these different scenes. Read books by some of those cool authors. Here it is. Here's my appendix. It's about to paste to you. There you go. But thanks again. I really, appreciate your time. You guys being here. It brings the world alive, and I think that's wonderful that you're interested in being awesome creators in your field of choice. Thoughts, gestures, questions?
Well, I just wanted to say thank you so much. You've given us a lot to think about, and I wanted to thank the audience as well. I'm going to give you a big hand.
Thank you.
And I want to remind everybody that there's a recording of this presentation, and it'll be at the URL I just pasted up there somewhere. um, and I also just kind of wanted to remind everybody that our um, next expert event will be Friday the 27th at 1 SLT time, and that we're going to be we'll be seeing Kip Rolfo or Stephen Van Hook. And to see all the events, the VWEC events, you can look at our calendar, which I've pasted into there. And I'm going to just paste a whole bunch of other stuff in here
Thank you. Yes. Thanks.
for social media. And again, thanks Agile. This was really wonderful. We're gonna kind of stand up and maybe go over to. Oh wait, we have three minutes for questions, guys. Let's let's. I didn't pick up any questions in the chat, so it's open for typing, or you can do it in voice as well.
Awesome. Questions, hit us up or share something. I love all your comments to date.
I just would like to say that I appreciate the fact that you are looking at constructivism for learning, because that's exactly what I teach my students. That this idea of doing doing something to learn and to cement it. So it was really nice to see that I'm not the only one.
That's brilliant. I love it. That's why we're here. And it's a bit of a pun, like literally building, but that's constructionism or constructivism. Just make them do a one-line tweet. But I love that you think that way. I think that's so engaging compared to, the way I grew up. It was not good for my psychology as a kid. And so I
Did you
think
have
that's
to do
fascinating.
dictation? Did you have to like write down dictation?
Well, that sounds exciting. No offense to people that designed SRA, but we had these things called SRA, and you'd grab this thing and you read it, and you'd answer these questions, and it wasn't me. It was awful. Um, so yeah, I dreaded those a lot. What I liked is Chris Haskell's gamified 3D game lab. You pick your quest. They're designed to be short. Go out there to 1920s Berlin and look around, or it was a brownstone psychology build. So I want to live my life that way. So that's why I want you guys to succeed with your training. I can come to your class and have fun. You can train a new generation to do it this way.
Well, I actually teach my classes in spatial, and I have a spatial build that basically where I teach my classes, I have all the previous student projects up so that new students can see what the last students have done, um, and
Oh,
and it's I think it's a really effective, because I think a lot of times when students think about these things before they've ever seen them, they have no idea. They have no idea. So it's really helpful for them to like do a bunch, to look around and see what other people have done and what we mean by, building in these spaces.
yeah, indeed. Yeah, it's a bit of a adjustment at first, right?
Hmm.
But I think once you're fluent with the technology, of course, I have to kick it occasionally, but then I think you can really get to a deeper learning. And my fear a little bit is if I am so used to it that it's a frictionless environment for me. Like I learn every message you say, but for my students, if they're just in here and it's hard to point to the slides, am I assuming it's better than it is? Like it's great for me, but for my students, maybe they're not getting the full lesson. I don't know, but I'm going to do it anyway because it's cool. And I think if we build it in the right way, I'm inspired by what you do. So,
Well, thanks again. We will now, I guess, move over to the refreshments area, and we can continue the conversation. Thanks again, everybody.
thanks so much, everyone.